Alright folks, you're looking at a pretty well dressed out beam right here. I mean, yeah, there are some fair amount of bark left on it and wrangle, but you could use this beam alone to do some beautiful work. Or you can do what we're going to do, cut it up into fourths, and then rough cut it into fourths. And that way you get a lot more serviceable material from it. You'll notice when I was cutting, the blade was wanting to stop and everything. I probably need to change the blade out, but the other thing you need to keep in mind, pine is a very wet wood. It's a very sappy wood. I need to go ahead and clean out this sawmill. And you notice because of the amount of fine powder that's going through it, so that fine powder can cause some serious slippage. So if we were to pop the hood on this thing, so to speak, go ahead and lift the lip catches here. You'll see that thing is just slam packed full of sawdust. So we're going to go ahead and clean this bad boy out, but you can see the consistency of the sawdust. It's fairly it's capable. If you were to put your bare hands on that, I think you'll find that it's got a kind of a sappy consistency because it is yellow pine. Then it's kind of the way it goes. So we're going to go ahead and clean this bad boy out real good. And we'll see about getting this thing cut into fours. So we'll see you here in a bit. Welcome back. We're cleaning out the sawmill right here, and you'll notice that it is positively gummed up with sawdust. Now one could say, Jay, what about the sawdust removal system of a sawmill? Because every piece of machinery has a removal system for sawdust, etc. You can see we got a chute over here on the side. That's a fine piece of machinery. We got a sawdust removal system here on the side, and you can see we got perforations right here on this top bar. Well, allow me to explain something. I touched base on it a little bit at the end of the last video, and a lot of it has to do with the consistency of what you're trying to remove. Now what we're dealing with here, folks, is green wood, and we're dealing with pine. Pine is a very sappy wood. You can see how it gums everything up. And basically, you see how it pretty much is like a mortar. You see that? Now, that's not from the blade clearage system. In other words, it's not part of the blade cooling or cleaning system. What that is that is just natural pine fine sawdust. So basically, you wind up with a adhesive mortar that gets up into your parts and gets up, and you see, you guys remember in the video there how the blade was bogging. Well, that's because it's from slippage. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. It's from slippage because basically all this sawdust is working its way into the various parts. Now one could say, why don't you use an air hose and clear all that out of the way? I could do that. But number one, I don't feel like having all the backblast of this coming up into my lungs because this is fine powder. And you are spraying into a backdrop. That's a backdrop. So all that air, pressure, dust, and everything has got one place to go, all over you. And if it doesn't hit me, it's going to hit my wonderful director that's filming this. And, well, my wife suffers from allergies, and I don't need her getting a lung full of sawdust from a pine tree. So we'll just do this the good old-fashioned way and clear it out of here nicely and have fun while we do it. And again, this is part of the learning experience and seeing what we had to pay attention to. Now, if this was a bone dry tree, which a tree of this size would probably take at least 3 years to dry out. So who wants to put their building projects on hold for 3 years or 2 years? I know there's a lot of guys that will cut timber and stack it and just forget about it for 2 to 3 years on end, and they kind of stagger it that way. Every year they'll go and drop timber, drop timber, drop timber, and pretty much that's what they do. Eventually we might do that as well. But for starting out, what we're doing here is starting out raw, starting out green, and doing what our great pioneer forefathers did, regardless of what nation you hail from. I don't care if it was Europe, I don't care if it's America. They built green. They needed a place to live, and that's what they did. So, as part of the learning process, if you are looking to get into the sawmill based on what I'm seeing, then I would advise always making sure you have your blade tension. We've been babysitting that, and you've seen that that is working well. We've started high, worked our way down, and just skim cutted, skim cutted, skim cutted. Well, as you notice, it's pretty much the blade cleaning system isn't working that great because, well, it's the material you're working on. And then it's the amount of material that is accumulate in this sawmill. So our takeaway, I guess you would say, from this is I would say probably about every, I'm not going to say 5 cuts, but at the twice a day, I would think would be a fair amount of number. If you're going to blow it out, make sure you got something over your eyes and your mouth. And yeah, you could probably blow it out then. Just make sure no one's around you that's going to be catching it, because they're not going to appreciate that, I assure you. Other than that, take some time, brush it out. Now you notice I don't have the engine running. You notice I don't have the engine in the blade here running at all, trying to vibrate it out. Why is that? Well, number one, you don't ever want to put yourself in a position you shouldn't be. And now you are staring at the jaws of the beast. You don't want that. Now you notice before I was running the motor, holding the clutch, and operating it, getting the blade to rotate, and using the water hose to get the sawdust coming down into my blade and to my initial wash area right here at the little nozzle to clear it out. So that's one thing. But with your protective shield up, you don't want to be running this thing ever. Because if this thing pops off, because we have noticed that this thing can pop off because of vibratory effect, it's got one place to go, all over you. And I don't care if that is dull as a garden hoe, they'll still cut into you right nicely, folks. So we're going to get this cleaned up real well. And I hope you're enjoying this growing experience that we're going on. And you can kind of get in your head whether or not if you want to attempt this. But even with all this, I can safely say that this is just part of any kind of maintenance on any kind of machinery. If anyone took wood shop when they were a kid, at least I did. In school, you remember how you used to blow down the machinery at the end of every class for the next kids coming in. That's part of it. You take 15 minutes, blow everything down, you'd have one massive sawdust cloud in the wood shop. No, we didn't have any masks on or anything else. You cover sawdust when you go into math class or wherever you were going. It was always hilarious. But we're going to get this cleaned up and everything, folks, and we'll revisit this, and then we'll come on back. Stick around. And we're going to get us, try to get roughly 4 4x4s out of this. Alright folks, let's take a look at what we got going on. You can see how that blade wanted to bind up a couple times, and I'm going to say that probably the blade needs to be changed out because it's probably just not that good quality of an initial delivered blade on a sawmill. Now what we have here, it might not be a proper term, but I'm going to call it rough dimensional lumber. Same thing you get for working in your garden, same thing you could probably get for working anywhere. Well, if you come over here to the end, just hang 10 for a second here. Let's get this thing where it'll want to roll out. There you go, folks. We got a couple different size beams right here. Yeah, there's a little bit of round on some of them. But really, I think this is going to work pretty well for building together a structure, getting something roughed out, and making it where we can make this happen. And you can see that we got this amount out of the size log that we put here. Now keep in mind, this is green. Those bad boys got some weight to them, folks. If you got a bad back, I would be fairly careful doing this. Now again, you want to do it pretty swift, you can hook up straps to it. Move it right off the sawmill. No problem. But you can see, if you look at this, that is some pretty smooth looking wood. Relatively blemish free. Well, you're going to be building a green wood, Jay. How are you going to do that? Well, what we're going to do is by the time we get some of this accumulated, and the other thing we will do is stack this up. So it might dry a little bit, but part of doing our initial saw yard here is getting things set up and ready to work. But if there's one thing I think we have done in our initial, I'm not going to call it testing because we own it, but if there's one thing we have done during our orientation to our machinery that we got, I think we have proven the feasibility and the usage potential for this sawmill. I have a 12-foot timber. We got 4 usable beams. You can't beat that. You saw out the other one, we got a couple nice slabs and we had some fun with it. And folks, that's only out of one section of tree. That's not including the fact that we got several trees already dropped. And that's not including slabbing it out into 1-inch slabs per se, putting up siding. So if you liked the video, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.